There's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is an inner emptiness, whereas solitude is an inner fulfillment. And today I want to talk to you about the discipline of solitude. And everything I'm going to teach you today I've actually got from Richard Foster's book, The Celebration of Discipline. And if you haven't read this book, I can highly recommend it. It's about different spiritual disciplines that we can put in place to help us grow in our relationship with God. And the discipline of solitude is not so much about a place we go to, but the state of our heart and minds. And we can be in the midst of a really busy crowd and yet still have solitude. Because with solitude, it removes the fear of being alone. Because in a place of solitude, we know that we are never alone. Jesus regularly practiced solitude. You can see it most clearly in his outward solitude. So like in Matthew 4, Jesus goes in the wilderness to be alone, to be tempted. In Luke 6, Jesus goes to be alone in the night before he chooses the 12. And also in Mark 1, Jesus gets up really early in the morning to spend time alone with God in prayer. So Jesus practiced this discipline of solitude in his relationship with God. But before I move on, I just want to say that solitude is important, but so is community. And you can't have solitude without community. And likewise, you can't be all about community without having solitude. So both these things go together in our relationship with God. Another part of solitude is to be silent. And silence is about having a quietness in our hearts, even in a busy place, so that we can listen to God, not filling our hearts with thoughts about ourselves or other distractions, but just being quiet and open to listen to God. Silence is also about knowing when it's right to speak and when it isn't. In James 3, he says, anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect. So according to James, a perfect person is someone who can control their tongue. And for a lot of us, I know I do this, we want to justify our actions or explain why we do things. And we use our tongues to control situations, to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it. And actually, silence takes all of that away and forces us to trust God. It forces us to be in a place where we can't control our situation with our speech, where we have to do things without saying why. And in doing that, we're trusting God to justify us if we need justifying, and we're trusting God to be in control when we can't be. There was a famous priest in the 16th century called St. John of the Cross, and he explained a season that we all go through called the dark night of the soul. And this isn't a bad thing, this isn't a punishment, but it's actually a divine appointment from God to set us free. And usually during this time, we may feel alone, we may feel dry and lost. It's a time when all our senses seem to just stop. And usually it happens when we're excited about pursuing this discipline of solitude. And after a while, the excitement dies away and everything, all of our senses, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, just seem to stop working. And God may feel really far away. God may feel distant in this time. But actually, this is something that allows us to come closer to God. And this is how St. John of the Cross describes it. The darkness of the soul mentioned here puts the sensory and spiritual appetites to sleep. It binds the imagination and impedes it from doing any good discursive work. It makes the memory cease, the intellect become dark and unable to understand anything. And hence it causes the will also to become arid and constrained, and all the faculties empty and useless. And over all this hangs a dense and burdensome cloud which afflicts the soul and keeps it withdrawn from God. During this time, our Bible study, our worship, our listening to sermons might become really difficult and just boring. And it may be tempting in this time to try and seek other churches or other spiritual experiences, but that's actually a mistake to do that, because in doing that, you're trying to take yourself away from what God is doing. And what God is trying to do is bring you into a place where you have no distractions of emotion or other thoughts or other experiences. Not that those things are bad in themselves, but they can very easily become distractions when we're in our relationship with God. And when those things are taken away, God's inviting us to just simply be silent with him. And it actually means that we can hear him better. And at first we may not, but over time what we'll realize is that God is teaching us something, that God is doing something in us. And when we come through the end of this season, we find that we've learned something that we couldn't have learned if we were just going about life normally with great emotions. But actually, in this place of stillness, God is able to speak more clearly and bring us closer to him. I just want to finish by giving us some steps as to how we can practice this discipline of solitude. The first thing is to take advantage of the many solitudes throughout the day. And it might be if you wake up early in the morning before anyone else does in the house, and you just spend 10 minutes while you're lying in bed just to focus on God and be still before him. Maybe if you're in a quieter house, you can just get up and go into another room and just spend time with him. Or maybe it's even on your way to work while you're driving or on public transport. You can just listen to God and be still and just let him speak to your heart. Or even when you're out and about throughout the day, if you just notice creation, notice the sea, notice the trees or the sky or whatever it might be, and just let God speak in that. And the idea of these moments is just to be present in them and be aware of God. The second step is to have places of solitude, those places that we can go to where we won't be disturbed and we can just be with God alone. So that might be a room in the house, it might be somewhere outside the house, a park or a beach or something like that, but just finding a place where we can be alone with God. The third step is our actions. We really often find that we have to explain or justify our actions. But what if we start doing things where we don't explain why we're doing them? We don't say that the reason we're getting up to do something is because of this, but actually we just go and do stuff. And the fear of being misunderstood, actually we allow that to be there in order that we can trust God to justify us if we need to be justified. That we can trust God to be in control of a situation. And this is quite a difficult one, but if we can learn to just be quiet and do things and trust God in that, then that actually brings us really close to him. The fourth step is our words. Wouldn't it be great if we just became known as people that always have something good to say when we speak? In Ecclesiastes 5 verse 5 it says, "It's better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it." And as part of practicing solitude, it's about learning when it's right to speak and when it isn't. So when we're in a meeting or when we're in just out with our friends, can we learn to just be really careful about our words and know when it's right to speak so that we're speaking good things when we speak? The fifth step is complete silence. And this is more of an experiment to see how you feel throughout the day, but maybe try going a whole day without saying anything. And the idea of doing this is just to simply see what comes to mind when you can't speak, how you feel when you can't speak. Maybe it causes you to realize where you're trying to control situations or even people, and it will teach you how to be more humble and more trusting of God to be in control of those situations. So thank you for watching today. I hope that this discipline of solitude has inspired you and excited you to try this and to learn how to be still before God, how to hear him better, how to grow in relationship with him, and how to take this discipline to be more like Christ in our day-to-day lives.